All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SaaS Founders Show, where we have fascinating conversations with successful SaaS founders who share their journeys, learnings, and insights along the way. I'm Tony Zayas, your host, or your co-host, Andy Helko, should be joining us, popping in here in a moment. Maybe not. He's had some technical difficulties, but I want to get right to it. And jump right in because today we have Jessica Day, who's the co-founder and CMO of IdeaScale. And IdeaScale is an idea management platform that uses crowdsourcing to help you find and develop the next big thing. Super excited to hear all about it. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tony. Hopefully Andy can join us soon, but I'm really pleased to be here. Love the stories that you're sharing.
Yeah, thank you. We enjoy it a lot. We always have really interesting conversations. You asked us about some of the things that when we first reached out. So I will actually start with that point because you're somewhat prepared for this question now. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird would you say you are?
I was thinking about this, and I think I'm a solid 8.
Okay.
But like I do a real, like, I make those like extra 2 points work hard so that you can't always tell. But like the example I was using in my head for this is we had a Halloween party one year as the company, and we invited people to show up in costume, but I showed up with a box of costumes and changed into 4 different ones throughout the night. So it comes out sometimes. I think that like former theater nerd thing.
That's funny. Well, I think there is probably something to that. As a founder, as a visionary, there's probably something about you that you think a little bit differently than the average person that you might run into. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But pretty cool. But I appreciate you playing along with us there. That's a fun one. So tell us about IdeaScale, just high level, overview of the company, and then we could dive in. You don't want to hear about the journey and where you started and all that, but just big picture overview. We'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, so IdeaScale is, sort of the value of it is in the name. The idea is that you can gather great ideas from anyone, anywhere, whether it's like your frontline employee or your customer. But you want to be able to organize all those ideas that you're gathering, because if they can come from anywhere, you're going to get a lot. So you've got to be able to prioritize them, make choices about them, turn them into products, turn them into different projects or new ways of working. So our software helps you do all that, both gather those ideas and then prioritize them to take action on them.
That's awesome. I've never necessarily heard of something just like that, but it sounds like something super relevant for a lot of people. So I would love to ask and find out, where did the idea come from and how was that born?
Well, it's funny, actually. My co-founders and I, we kind of, got out of school and we're getting through our first couple of jobs, and most of us ended up working at these like larger organizations or working for larger organizations like banks. One of my co-founders was working as an intern at the White House. I was, working with Microsoft, things like that. And we found that there is this like really impenetrable layer for new ideas that always turned up in these big companies, and sometimes for good reason. But you had to like know a lot of people, be there for a long time to get your ideas heard in any meaningful way. And we also were all of us very mission focused. Like we cared about things like the growing income gap or climate change. And we knew like the solutions to those problems are not going to come from the people who have always been running things already. You need to be looking in under every rock for
Yeah.
solutions. So we were like, okay, if we're going to solve some of the world's biggest problems, we need to find a way to get, to connect the people with the ideas to the people with the resources to make those changes.
That's awesome. So what was the initial idea for the product service? What did that look like?
It's funny. So 2 of my other co-founders were working in the survey software space. And at first they were like, maybe this is a type of survey question. Like we can ask people like, what should we be asking about? And then other people can respond to the answers. But as they started to build that, they realized that we were entering this realm of what people were just starting to call crowdsourcing at the time. which covered like a wide variety of things, everything from like Wikipedia to, Quora. And we were in this space where it was crowdsourcing ideas. And we realized it had to be its own product because there were a lot of other things that needed to go with it. Like if you're going to gather all those ideas, you've got to be ready to do something with them. And if you're going to be, bringing all these people into the process, you're actually kind of building community and using some of the social mechanics of social media. So that's how it became its own thing and not just a question type within survey software.
Very cool. So it started fairly simple and then probably grew into a lot more than that. What was when you guys first launched the product? What did the MVP look like?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So our company kind of came of age during the Obama administration coming into office, and they had a whole new approach to how they were going to do feedback management in open government. Obama launched the Open Government Initiative, and he said that every federal agency needed to have a system that was transparent, participatory, and collaborative. And we had some sort of connections into some of those government relationships. And so one of our first customers was the White House.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, okay, that's what the MVP has to be. We need a system for gathering that feedback. It needs to be transparent, participatory, and collaborative. And that's sort of how we launched. We helped them launch one of their premier initiatives, which was called the SAVE Award, which was asking any federal employee, whether they were, in DC or Wisconsin, for ideas on how they could save the government money. And so we were preparing for that project. And that's how we got the minimum viable product of like, you can share your ideas, other people can vote on them and comment on them, and you can prioritize them that way.
Very cool. So you mentioned collaboration. So how does the platform encourage and enable collaboration? Curious. That sounds awesome.
Well, at the time it was very, kind of just the MVP was like, you can vote on it, you can vote it up, you can vote it down, you can comment on it, and those were threaded comments, so you could see certain people, you could see people responding within like conversations. You could pin certain comments, like if there was like something like, oh, we actually already did this, and you wanted to pin that to the top, you can make sure that people already knew that. And you could move those ideas between basic stages of like in progress or, completed. And that's what the MVP experience looks like. What it looks like now is much more like you can do a lot more to collaborate with each other. You can build business proposals together. You can share documents. You can kind of like estimate value and record the potential ROI of certain ideas. And that can come from anyone, anywhere.
Wow.
And of course, there's some like game mechanics too. Like right now, you can do things like anybody in the community can offer kudos to anybody else in the community for their comments or for their ideas. And the more you get, of course, the higher you proceed on the leaderboard.
That's cool. We talk to a lot of founders that have introduced some level of gamification, and we always see that always sparks a great conversation. What has that done for the platform and the engagement, interaction? Has that been an important piece?
It has, but it's also been an evolution. I mean, we started off with this unique set of badges that we created and our own scoring for different types of things, but we've shifted to this peer-to-peer recognition system that we've seen be like kind of one of the new trends, because it's provided a lot more value in a system that's trying to reward people for the contributions they make, honoring the crowd's decisions about what's valuable instead of just what our algorithm or our badges say is valuable.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I would love to hear about the co-founders, because I know you mentioned that there's other founders. What does we typically like to talk about what the dynamic, the relationship between the founders looks like, and how did you guys come up with that joint vision, and what's the working relationship like?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, one of the questions that you had said was potentially going to be talked about on this podcast was, who are the three most influential people on your life? And my first thought was, well, my three co-founders
Oh,
probably
that's
have had
cool.
the biggest imprint on my life. So I have my CEO, Rob Hohen, was one of our co-founders, and he sort of was able to take this vision and run with it. Vivek Bhaskaran, one of our other co-founders, has a multi-time entrepreneur, has founded many other companies. So he brought a lot of that leadership and is still a member of our board today. And my other co-founder, Josh Folk, he was sort of our entry into business, which I know not a lot of like SaaS founders that I've talked to are getting their start working with government, but we certainly did. And that's one of the things that Josh brought to us.
Oh, great. So do you guys all have experience from different arenas, basically?
Most of them, besides me, have founded some other company in some other way, at least one other.
Okay.
Whereas the other thing I had ever founded before was a nonprofit, which is,
Cool.
well, has had some similarities, but has been a lot different in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, that's great. So how do you guys, from a strategic perspective of, what's next in the evolution of IdeaScale, how do you guys collaborate? What does that look like? Do you do, quarterly strategy meetings, or how do you handle that?
Well, it looks a lot different now than it used to, in some ways. And in some ways, it's because we're actually all spread out.
Okay.
Rob and I are co-located here in California, but Josh is still located close to our federal government business in DC, and Vivek's down in Texas. In some ways, it's easier for us all to coordinate now in COVID times. So we're meeting on a pretty regular basis, actually, usually at least once a month. Usually all of us are there. Sometimes Vivek can't make it because he's still also a major interest in some of his other startups.
Yeah,
Um, but Josh and Rob and I are talking all the time about big decisions and small decisions sometimes too.
very cool. So you guys have been at this for a while. We were just talking before we came on the air that, 11 years in now. Is that correct? And last year,
Yeah.
a big milestone, right? 10 years in business. What would you say is, was the biggest momentum that you guys got along the way in really kind of scaling and growing and building a foundation? What would you say that biggest kind of period
I'd
of growth
say
was like?
I think it was a mind shift that we needed to make as a company. It wasn't like one single moment necessarily, but about 5 years in, we were continuing to grow, but we weren't growing as fast as we wanted and as predictably as we wanted. And we realized that we had built a very sales first, very sales focused organization that was like really celebrating new revenue every time we closed a deal. We banged the gong, um, what we realized we wanted to do is shift to being a customer obsessed company. And really, like we that's when we started building out that team and started investing much more in like the strategic support that we can provide to our customers. And that sort of transformed our business. And I think that's led to, both more predictable growth and some of those revenue benefits, but also like better stories from our customers and like, more brand advocates that are out there talking about the work that they're doing with our tool.
That's fantastic. So that was the shift to just being more customer centric and really focus on them. That's outstanding. Just to you mentioned a little bit about growing in the team. What does the team look like nowadays?
Yeah, so we're a very global team actually, and it's become even more like that post-COVID because now we're kind of a virtual first organization, but we have people in India, we have people in Bangladesh, we have people all over the US. And our biggest teams are our development team because we're really invested in building out the product and making it kind of like one of the leading solutions out there. And then our customer success team, because as I said, that's the most important thing we can do is invest in our customers.
Yeah, that's great. Just about your background, I don't think we've talked about this at all yet, but you mentioned Microsoft. I'd love to hear some of the learnings that you got from your time there. But do you have a technical background?
No, no. I come from the kind of the arts world, and hence the theater stuff. But I pursued writing, and I've always been obsessed with storytelling, and that's kind of the thing that continues to draw me to IdeaScale, is talking about the stories that are happening with our customers. But so that's what I went to school for. I got my MFA in creative writing and came out and started using that in the business world. And I wasn't an employee of Microsoft directly, but I was working with some firms that did work with them. And that was sort of my first taste of what it's like to work at a big company. And I remember coming out of school and I would go to the Microsoft campus and they'd be like, oh my God, there's soda and you can just take it. That was like the thing that floored me at the time. But now I think about like what was interesting about that experience, you know, the way that they are able to organize some of those large teams at scale, and solve problems, like, but with like hundreds of people working on different parts of it. In some ways, it's like crowdsourcing.
Yeah,
All these different people working on these different tasks to make a company that huge.
that's interesting. So, I'm sure there's a number of things that played into how you built out IdeaScale, but did that offer up any, ideas or concepts? And, again, you're talking about really large teams, lots of people, lots of ideas that
I
play into
think
it all.
I think we borrowed liberally from a lot of the other experiences that we had, but also we wanted to be, it's funny thinking about the 11 years that we've been around, how different, like the internet has gone through like several reinventions in that time. And when we were getting started, we were part of, when we were talking to the Obama White House, we were part of what they called new media. Like they weren't calling it digital media or like,
I remember.
and we were lumped in with like YouTube. They didn't know what to do with all of us.
Yeah.
But we were all learning from each other. Like I remember for a long time, we were calling ourselves Reddit for ideas because there were a lot of principles in Reddit that were inspiring to us. But certainly we looked at some of these larger tech companies to see like, yeah, how are they organizing ideas? And how do we have to like get through all of these layers of permission so that ideas eventually have a life of their own?
That's really cool. I'd like to ask, funding wise, I know you said that you guys bootstrapped. So would love to hear about, how that has worked out for you. And is there any advice you'd give to others who are trying to decide between bootstrapping or trying to raise money? And love to hear how you guys took the path that you did.
Well, I see merits to both. We've stayed bootstrapped this whole time, and certainly there have been times where we've talked about like, is it time to go do some fundraising? But we've stayed bootstrapped, I think, because we really like the freedom to make our own choices. We've, making certain shifts away from not just a crowdsourcing tool, but this management prioritization tool. Like we didn't have to go to a board and pitch that strategy. We were able to sort of make some very agile decisions and do that. And then also it's allowed us to stay really in keeping with our values. We've done a lot of things that I don't necessarily think that VC funders would have cared about. Like we were the first of our type of software to go fully carbon neutral. And that was an initiative that took time to figure out. We like did things like when George Floyd was killed, we decided to take a week off and cease all non-essential IdeaScale activities and have a week of action where people could learn or take part in different things. And I think those would have been much riskier endeavors if we had gone the VC funding route. And we really enjoyed being able to do that, be like a purpose-driven company as well as a like growing, successful, profitable company.
Yeah, that's super interesting. As a purpose-driven company, I would love to hear about your culture.
Yeah.
Striving for, and be really interested to hear.
Yeah, we have sort of a 6 key values at IdeaScale. They're optimism, an undaunted attitude, kindness, collaborative, curious, and conscientious. And those are sort of the things that we're building for at all times. And because, you'll notice like optimism is one of those things you really need if you're going to be in the change industry,
Yeah.
because it's hard along the way. And that's going to be one of the things that our customers are experiencing as they're gathering ideas and trying to create change. It's certainly something we experience. Um, so that's one of the things we're like looking for, and also trying to actively help people with. One of the things I say in innovation too is how important it is to embrace failure. One of my favorite quotes is like, failure should always be the beginning, not the end of an experience. And so we definitely talk about our failures, and then we're very much always are encouraging people to have a short memory, and just, shake it off,
Yeah.
and like, okay, well, remember what you learned from that, but on to the next thing. Try something else, or maybe try even the same thing again, but differently.
That's a awesome observation. I love that concept, and I'm always curious why that isn't more embedded just in education and kind of our day-to-day life. The idea that failure being, an essential part of growing. So how do you guys, take those learnings and grow from failures along the way? Because I think that's something that's, every SaaS founder is dealing with, failures and setbacks. How do you use that to move forward?
Well, I think one of the things we do is we talk about them. Like, we meet as a whole company once a month in these town hall style meetings. And oftentimes we're talking about things that didn't go well, like a customer we lost, or, a mistake we made, or somebody that we brought on that doesn't match our ideal customer profile, and therefore is probably not going to succeed with us, and what to do about those things. So it's not like they're just something that's being talked about like on our own. Like, I remember we brought on a customer that we were really excited about. Like, we're like, this would be like a really important project to work on. But it required all of these custom changes that were very specific to that customer. And it just, neither side was happy about it in the end. We were building stuff that was not serving the rest of our customer base. They felt like we weren't delivering what we wanted, or what they wanted. And in the end, like, we had to part ways with this really great customer, but the entire company was kind of privy to that story along the way. They knew why it wasn't working, I think that's helped us like get better customers that are a better fit for us ever since.
So that's something you guys actively talk about, your clients and how well they fit. Because
Oh,
I,
definitely.
I think that's something that's super important, but hard to balance when you're trying to grow, a business. You're typically, early on, especially until there's some stability there, you want to get as many customers as you can. So it's hard to be able to say, oh, we don't really want these kinds, or, firing clients, that type of thing. So
Especially when you're bootstrapped.
yeah, absolutely. So how did you guys deal with that? Because I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was, for all the reasons that you said, really difficult for us to be able to say like, well, but we need this revenue. That's what's going to help us grow. But I think that was part of the same shift of this. Like, we've got to be investing in our customers and growing these people, because in SaaS, renewals are the lifebloods of the organization. So we really had to figure out, what are the hallmarks of somebody who's going to be successful making this into an innovation program, and like vet them as they're coming in for those markers. Do they have an innovation process that's going to serve them? Do they have some
Mm.
support from leadership? Do they have some sort of strategy to bring a large group of people into this process with them? And if they don't have that, it's going to be a much harder thing for us to renew them in a year. So it doesn't serve us in the end.
Gotcha. Who are the, if you had to define your target audience, that ideal prospect, what does that look like? What industry or industries? How big are these companies? You already got the logo of the White House on the website, right? Or I don't know if you guys do, but that's starting out. That's pretty powerful. But who's that audience that you're targeting?
Well, it's changed a lot in 11 years. So we don't necessarily work in any particular vertical, because who doesn't need to change? Like, is there anybody who's like, no, I don't need new ideas?
Mhm.
Um, I will say though that our track record in government and some of the features that we've built specifically for the government audience has made it like a just like the foundation of our business. It's, I
Gotcha.
think, over 40% of our business. But then everything else through the enterprise is really divided up. But we used to be working with kind of could be anybody, project managers, somebody in the communications team. But what we're finding now is that almost half of the people that we're working with have this title of innovation manager. It's this role that didn't exist probably 10 or 11 years ago, or not as much, and it's exploded in the past 10 years.
Yeah, I have heard of that role. And to your point, it's a newer title out there, but that's pretty cool. So is that typically the primary person that you're dealing with if you had a single point of contact at a client account?
Yeah, that's usually the person who's getting in there and coordinating this effort. Sometimes they're reporting to a chief innovation officer. Sometimes there's transformation officers, and we often play in the digital transformation space too.
Yeah.
But yeah, innovation manager is the most common person that we'll be working with.
Very cool. Love to circle back to talk a little bit about, with the things you mentioned about culture and talking about the team. How do you find the right people that are a good fit? So what is the hiring process? What are things that you're looking for? Because I think you have a lot of unique things, and being purpose driven and all that, you got to have the right match, just like with your clients, your people as well, I'm assuming, but I'd like to hear more.
Well, I think one of the best things that we did for ourselves in the past couple of years is we started working with recruiting firms instead of trying to do the recruiting ourselves. We've found just more diverse talent. That's been a real priority. If you're only hiring off of your LinkedIn, you're sort of limited by your network. Whereas once we started opening it up and asking some recruiters for some help, we started finding people that didn't always look and think like us. So that was a big change. And now when we hire a role, we work with a recruiter and we go through multiple stages. Usually there's some sort of initial conversation. Usually there's some sort of task or opportunity to see that person, how they work. And then usually there's some sort of group-paced conversation that both assesses, their interest and their skills, but also, what they think of us. We used to actually, when we still had an office, invite that person in and we'd do a puzzle together. We'd just sit there and work on a puzzle and ask each other questions and kind of hang out. So it's harder to approximate that on a Zoom call, but that's what we're trying to do.
That's cool. It's funny. My wife bought a puzzle for me and my daughter and her to work on past couple of weeks, and I didn't realize how therapeutic and interesting puzzles could be. It's been a long time for me, so that's a cool concept. So what did you learn in that process?
I think one of the things that we learned is just the more we can get, I guess it's the diversity thing. The diversity, it's one of the things that drives innovation. Like the firms that report higher levels of diversity, I think there's 45% more likely to grow revenue and 70% more likely to capture a new market. If that's the type of thing that's serving our customers, we should be investing in it ourselves. And so that's one of the things we're looking for. And that doesn't just mean race or background, but also people who think differently. Like maybe we need some shy people in with this group of Gabby people. Maybe we need some people who, haven't worked in government before, even though we've got, great government customer set, because it's bringing in that diversity of thought is what helps us try and think of new things as well.
It's very cool. Yeah, in the ideas business, I would imagine you want a lot of perspectives, a lot of different, takes on things. So that's really fascinating. We talk about the idea when we're talking about founders, about the vision gap. And so we actually have this white paper that we published a few years back. And it's really the idea that, founders, are visionaries, and they come in and they have this vision for what they want, their business, their solution to be and look like, and all the things, all these possibilities that exist. But the challenge, that message along the way, and that's amongst the co-founders, from the founder, the team of founders to the internal team, out to the market, out to your clients. I would love to hear, some of the things that you guys have done to really solidify, first of all, that vision, and then how do you take that message out there as the CMO and someone, the marketing, marketing expertise. I would love to hear how you go about, broaching that topic.
It's really interesting. I should read your white paper. I haven't read it yet, but that's definitely a real thing, the vision gap. And it's making me think that one of our other core values should be patience. Because I think that especially when you do have ideas about where you want it to go and you get really excited about the future, it's hard to have like patience for that roadmap. I think one of the things that we do for sure is come together as a leadership team and talk about ideas, not just as co-founders, but like the leads of all of the teams, and try and get in everybody's perspective so that the solution that we're developing over in services or in our product is not being made in a vacuum, that people understand like why the customer is thinking this way or what new technology is driving this, instead of just making a decision. So that the transparency, I think, matters a lot. And then, yeah, I just think also like patience with the process. Like, yes, we know that AI and natural language processing is the future of innovation management. We've got people working on it, but like what we want it to be and what it is right now, like it's helping us better organize things right now and like kind of helping us sort through the data. But like what it can do in the future, we're not there yet. And so we've got to kind of wait for that. And at the same time, new trends are coming in all the time. Like I think voice is going to be really interesting when it comes to innovation, because you can start just gathering ideas with your voice from anywhere, making it like even more frictionless. But that's still in the future for us.
Being as client centric as you guys are, and having an innovative product and solution, curious how you guys take feedback from your users. Obviously, there's a lot of ideas, and you guys are open and sharing a lot internally with the team. How do you take and learn from your clients on how to improve and adding features to the roadmap? What's the process look like for that?
Well, we wouldn't be very good, a very good company if we didn't use our own product for that. So we definitely have a community where everyone, not even just our customers, but like the public, if they have ideas for what they think we should build, they can come in and make that suggestion, vote on other people's, see where certain things are in our process. That's ideas.ideascale.com. Like we go to that all the time, especially if we're like, I don't know, like what is, NLP? How is that going to affect us? We can go in there and we'll look at the ideas that are in there already for NLP. So it's kind of this like living bank. But, there are lots of ways to get that feedback. So we also have a customer advisory board that meets with us a couple of times a year and gives us feedback on some of the strategic choices that we're making. We run a survey every year, an in-depth survey where we pay our customers to tell us more of what's happening beyond the walls of our software. Yeah. And like, that's like my favorite time of year. I like constantly refreshing the results as they come in. I think of it as like our annual report card. And then lighter touch things, like, of course, we do the NPS survey, and gather feedback from that if we can. But so it's everything from those kind of like really qualitative, small focus group type things, like in our customer advisory board, to crowdsourcing the ideas for our next product decision.
Very cool. Yeah, that's great. And to your point, since that's what you guys are all about, I'm sure that's a big part of what you do. But that's exciting. When do you do that? What time is it? Typically the same time of year?
The annual survey, yeah. That's always like January, February. So it's happening right now. Like, okay. I'll probably get off of this interview and then go see what's changed. Yeah.
That's cool. Very cool. So to talk marketing, since that is your area, I would love to hear how you guys go to market. Obviously, you I'm guessing target those personas that will match, like you said. You have you guys try to stay guys go to market? What are some of the things from a tactical perspective that you're doing, and what has worked, really well for you guys?
Yeah, well, we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to be almost 100% inbound for like at least the first 9 years of our business. We've started to do more outbound in the past 2 years, and that's been a great investment. I'm very happy that we're doing that. But because we've been focused on inbound, the biggest win for us has been the content marketing that we've done that's helped us with our search engine optimization. Um, we I think also one of the things that we did in those early days that helped us was we decided to like lean into our brand and like make that something that we was recognizable with our from our customer experiences. For example, White House, first customer. It's like where we really want that business, but at the same time they were like, you have to take the IdeaScale logo off of it. And we were like, we're on this sort of like white knuckled call and we're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I think that's one of the things that's helped us because you're crowdsourcing, there's a lot more visibility on your brand. So you've got to be able to make your brand recognizable and something that people come back to. So I'd say like definitely like making white labeling something that's a really, really premium feature that you don't sacrifice. And SEO, investing in our content marketing.
Yeah, we've found the same. Exhibit gets like 90+% of our business that way, and it's fascinating. We talk to a lot of our clients and SaaS founders, and yeah, I mean SEO is so important because the people that are finding you are researching, they're learning, they're pre-qualifying themselves, and so
Yeah.
it leads to kind of we like to say a frictionless process once we start talking to people, which is fantastic. So that's great. So what have you guys done from an outbound standpoint? I'd be curious to hear, since that's newer, past couple of years, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're working with some firms who are essentially SDRs for us. And we've tried to find ways to rapidly onboard them to get to know our story and our customer profile. And they do that like hard work of being on LinkedIn, cold calling, emailing, and getting people who are interested to take that first step. But it's very interesting. The story that you tell is so different when you're talking to somebody who's outbound versus somebody who's inbound. We actually have two separate decks that we use depending on how that conversation started. Because somebody who's coming to you through a Google search, they're like, yes, I know why I need you. Just tell me what's different about you. Or
Yeah.
somebody who's outbound, you've got to start at the beginning and be like, just so you know, this is why crowdsourced innovation is what the Fortune 500 is doing.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. What has aside from SEO, what other types of marketing has had the best results for you guys?
Well, I don't know. So we have this sort of controversial idea, when Rob and I about event marketing, where we're it's kind of over, or at least the traditional sense. And so one of the things that we decided to do is instead of taking all of that budget that we would have used for sponsoring events, we decided to take that and put on our own event. That's just for our customers and people who are interested in crowdsourced innovation, and there's no sales that happens at that. We don't, pitch the product. We had some requests for people to see like what's coming, on the product roadmap, and so we've done some of that. But there's no like sales focus of it. It's just our customers talking about their use cases, challenges they've had. We've in fact encouraged them to talk about like, what are your roadblocks and like, why isn't it working? And it's sort of a workshop feel. And that has been one of our most powerful marketing tools, I'd say, bar none, because it's helped us build this community of practice. So you're not just buying into software. It's helped us create this great library of best practices content over the years. And it's also been a really great like social validation tool. Like, this is working for other people, or here's what you can expect. So that's been a big win for us.
That's really cool, and that sounds along the lines of that commitment that you have to the customer-centric approach, and pretty fascinating, right? That you're not selling, but it's been really successful to. That's really cool. I would love to hear. I mean, you already talked a bit about your co-founders and the importance that they play in your life, which is really cool to hear that story. But are there any other mentors or others that you lean on along the way, along your journey? We hear from a lot of people that they'll talk about groups that they're a part of, other entrepreneurs, friends, family members. For you, who are the people that you lean on? And I realize that might be some of the co-founders there as well, but would love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's been really powerful is we have what we call at IdeaScale an Alumni Network. So people who used to work at IdeaScale who have moved on to like really great places like HubSpot, Coursera, like other startups. We learn a lot from them, and we bring like especially in the past year, we've had this sort of like lunch with an alumni. And like we'll bring the whole company, whoever wants to come. It's sort of like an open Zoom call, and we'll have somebody from their current company come in and just tell us how they're doing, what they're working on, what they're learning. And I think that's been really rich. It's not just about the time you have when you're here, it's about this relationship that's ongoing. And yeah, as you say, I think networking provides this really rich place to be outside the walls of your organization. So I'm constantly going to things like I'm part of something called the MAG Collective. I'm part of this like women tech founders group. And I've met some really interesting people that way. Like this woman who's been like a tech founder in the past, but is now this like CEO of this like dog adoption training nonprofit. Like she's had some really interesting insights into pricing strategy that I wouldn't have known, and I wouldn't have found her any other way except through somebody like kind of connecting us that way.
It's really cool, and I love that idea of the alumni network. I'm in close touch with the organization I used to be with prior to Insivia, and it's funny because some of those relationships have grown even deeper than when I was there, and a lot of those ideas and all that. And that's kind of how I look at it, as that kind of alumni group. So really cool. I think that's kind of a missed opportunity for a lot of companies that kind of cut the cord with someone once they move on.
Right.
Yeah, where did that idea come from?
I think it's just part of like the culture I think kindness, I said, is one of our values. I think it's very much like we see each other as people first. So we just stay in touch. But we also, we have people's contact information. And that was just one of the things that seemed particularly important to us, is to not just for me to be calling our old product manager, but to be like, you know what, James has got some ideas that everybody should be hearing.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. That's a gem that will.
What are people coming to you for? They're trying to learn how to do podcasting, live streaming.
Yeah, it's certain things that I used to, a role that I played there, that just getting feedback on ways that they can improve and grow, and as they change. So it's just like they're tapping me for some of the expertise that I brought, and I'm asking them for things, and it has to do with that whole just having a really solid relationship and just staying in touch because of that relationship over any title or any company that's next to my name, right? It's just the people, and it's a good group of people. And I think that especially when a company like yours, you're putting emphasis on culture, and so hopefully you're working with people that are aligned with you, they're like-minded, they bring different perspectives, but at the same time share some of those values, and those tend to be the type of relationships that, regardless of where someone's working, you want to stay in touch with. So I have not heard that type of approach, and I love it. I love that idea. So thanks.
Yeah, I guess I would have to say that a big proponent of that was our CEO, my co-founder, Rob. Yeah. I remember being really bummed when like one of our one of my favorite people was like moving on to a different role, and he was like, Jessica, we did our job. We set them up to get their next great thing. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what our purpose is like to be like helping people be part of this larger world and have a great experience while they're here. So definitely a priority for us.
That's fantastic. I would love to hear, Jessica, just, as a founder, I realize that, it's not an easy role as, a co-founder and a CMO at a growing company. How do you manage? I realize that it's not always balanced, but how do you handle that and deal with it, especially now that so many people are virtual, and I don't know how that has changed or affected you, but what are some of the things that you're doing just to, stay in a good place, I guess I should say?
I'm sorry, but you cut out a little bit. It was about how to like maintain
Yeah.
work-life balance.
Work-life balance, yeah, and I realize it's not always balanced, but just as a founder, how do you stay in a good place? And I realize you have your nonprofit as well. How do you juggle all those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a silly thing, but I think the hardest thing for me to manage in my life is email because it's always on.
Yeah.
So one of the things I found very powerful is to create boundaries. I'm not checking email until noon, and I'm not and then I'm done with email at 4. And that's what lets me get real work done. And I think creating those boundaries around other things helps too. But email has been like a powerful one because it's like so easy to be like, well, I'll just answer one more and get that dopamine hit of task completion. But also it distracts you from some of the deeper thinking work that you need for marketing. Like so much of what I need to do is content creation and writing. And if I'm constantly like, oh, something new's in the inbox, you don't get very much done. So
that's a good
boundaries matter.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot like you in the sense that I'm easily distracted by all those alerts and everything. So I turn off as many as possible, and I try to keep with that, concept of boundaries as well. And it's been kind of a game changer for me since I started doing that, a couple of years back. But that's cool. So I guess last question. We've been asking everybody this question. But I would love to hear your take on it. So basically the idea is you've been at this for 11 years now. You guys have grown, doing some incredible things. If you were to go back into, the early days and be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with yourself back, early days, what piece of advice would you give to that, earlier you?
I think one of the things is have more fun along the way. There's a lot of things that were a lot of fun that I didn't think I necessarily appreciated that don't happen anymore. One of my favorite stories is like when we were like redoing and relaunching the website, and I was just like there at 10 p.m. on Halloween evening, like eating candy, listening to loud music with like a couple of my other coworkers, like putting together redirects. And like, I really like long for that time right now. In some ways the problems have shifted, and hopefully you don't miss those things along the way. But I think some of the other things too, like for us, the focus at the beginning was very much on crowdsourcing, getting as many ideas as possible. But one of the things that we've realized and what's driven a lot of our product development since is you need to do something with those ideas, which is why we needed to add all the stages where you can prioritize them, build proposals together. And so I think that was one thing to keep in mind, like what's going to happen to those ideas afterwards? And then the thing I already told you about, focus on the customers. Don't be so sales first.
Love it. That's all really good stuff. Jessica, where could the audience learn more about you and IdeaScale?
Yeah, so you can find out all about IdeaScale at ideascale.com. You can join some of our live challenges and be part of the community that solves some of these problems at crowd.ideascale.com as well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I hope everyone goes and checks it out. Jessica, I just want to say thank you again so much for your time here today. Some really fascinating insights and ideas. We certainly value it. And to everyone tuning in, thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Jessica.
Thanks, Tony.